back. Here's a question for you. What do you know about finances? When it comes to finances, you need a little help. Well, this is the place to be today, because today you are going to meet a financial coach. Someone who could help you understand just exactly what you should be doing with your finances. My name is Vin Dacquino. His name is Davin Sessa. Davin!
And
Talk to me. First of all, you're a young man. You are passionate about what you do, but how did you get involved in all this? Who is Davin? Where are you from? Tell me a little bit about you.
sure. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Thanks for coming.
So, a little bit of background on
Okay.
me. I've grown up locally. I went through
Nice.
the entire Mayapack education system,
Wow,
so
wow.
graduated there. While I was growing up, I don't think that there's a lot for the youth to do within these communities.
Okay.
And so my parents actually kind of guided me towards being involved in a lot of sports.
Nice.
So early on, I gravitated
Mayapack's
towards too.
great in sports.
They are.
Got
So
some great teams. I know, especially wrestling, football, basketball, soccer. You were
So I gravitated towards soccer,
Soccer,
very
that's
early
great.
on. And on top of soccer, I also ended up participating and getting involved in martial arts. So I
Martial
did both
arts,
since
wow.
I'm about 5 years old. And I'm actually still doing them. I'm very active and passionate about
so
them
if
today.
you get me angry today, I shouldn't try to hit you.
Believe it or not, I've been
Beat
trained.
me up, Davin.
I've been training in martial arts for almost 30 years now, and I
Wow,
don't
I'm
have
definitely
any
not
street
gonna try
fights
to hit
under
you.
my belt. So thankfully, the way I live,
I have a
has
black
avoided
belt, but it's only to hold my pants out.
that. My dad had a black belt too.
There's the discipline.
Yes.
So, how did you get into finance?
So it actually was not my first job out
Oh.
of college. My first job out of college was actually teaching martial arts.
Oh, wow.
And after a couple of years, I started looking at the big picture of my life, and I wanted to see where my career was going and how I could build my own mini empire, if you will. And I decided to make a change and to use my education and go into almost a family business, actually. So I went into the financial arena because my oldest brother actually had been in practice for over 20 years at that point in
Wow.
time. We're very well spaced
Wow.
apart.
Yeah.
And I've seen how he has been able to conduct himself, how he's been able to live the lifestyle that he has built, which was I wanted to aspire to, because he is a pretty good role model for me.
Yeah.
And so I chose to give it a shot.
I like your use of wording. Lifestyle. Understanding your finances is understanding a lifestyle. Doing things in a special way that covers you. Now, you talk to me about some of the things that encompass being financially stable. What were those things?
So when it comes to finances,
Yep.
people tend to look at it from a pretty complex viewpoint. In all reality, if you can keep it simple, isn't it easier?
Yeah,
So
there you go.
we do a lot of study on our part so that we can make things as simple as possible for our clients and the people that we work with. There's a few different types of styles to planning that I see, and I'll give you 2 examples. So the first one I see oftentimes is what I call the traditional advisor. Again, and no disrespect to anyone who operates in either realm.
Yeah, I hear you.
The traditional advisor does something called needs-based planning. And there's commercials that are out there today, so people are actively doing it. And you'll
Right.
see, if you sit in their office, they'll ask you the question, okay, great, so you're here, nice to meet you. How much money do you need when you retire? If I were to ask anybody that question, which I have just because,
Yeah.
most of the time they kind of look up in the air and they say, I don't really know, and they just
So,
throw out a number.
When you talk about financial security, you're really talking about making sure you're financially secure in the future
And today.
and today.
Correct.
Okay.
So when it comes to the financial needs planning, they'll ask, how much money do you need in retirement? Sometimes I'm talking to someone in their mid-20s or
worried
early
about tomorrow,
30s.
let alone retirement.
Correct. So
I hear
they'll throw
you.
out a number, and I'll say, well, how'd you come up with that? I don't know. Sounds like a good number.
Sounds like what I'd need. But you have no idea what's going to happen 40 years from now.
Correct.
Look at the market today. The market today is insane. I mean, one day the market's up 400 points, the next day it's down 700. Then it's up 200. Then it's down 600. I mean, it's crazy.
So I often say, if we don't know what the weather's going to be tomorrow, how are we going to know exactly what your account is going to do in 30 to 40 years?
That's good. That's fair.
You know,
That's fair.
so I don't subscribe to that philosophy of planning because there's too many variables. How do you know how much money you need today?
Yeah.
How do you know exactly the rate of return that you'll get each and every single year until you retire?
So in terms of finance, you're actually, and in terms of weather, you're talking about financial forecasting.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well put.
interesting. So there are some very specific things you have to keep in mind when you think of financial forecasting. You mentioned that one of the things you have to worry about is security. Talk to me about that.
So there's 3 areas that I'll highlight: protection, savings, and growth.
Okay.
And people will address those in different orders. Again, the traditional advisor, what I have seen from looking at clients' plans when they come to us, a lot have addressed the growth area first, meaning they're putting money at risk. So they're going on more of an investment-focused plan. So even in a typical 401k, no matter where you're working, there are investments in that vehicle. And depending on how the market performs will depend on how much money you end up
And not
accruing.
everyone's the same.
Not everyone's the same, of course not.
So you can
course not.
invest in many different ways.
Sure.
And the idea is always the same, trying to secure some money for the future.
Yes, and secure your today's.
And securing the
So
one you have today.
When
So
you say secure for the future, I have seen many people think that way. Let's secure for the future. But if someone's in their, let's say, early 30s, mid 30s, secure your future. But what about today? What's more important? Is today more important to you, or is retirement more important?
Yeah.
So both are
Yeah.
important. But what is more pressing?
Right. You
And
can
we want to look.
understand why you would need money when you retire. But if you're a father of 3 kids and you're working out all day, every day, and somebody has to feed those kids, and you need the money now. I know that when I first started teaching, I taught for years, and they came up with this new idea, and it was to create what was called IRAs. And they were telling us that what we should do is, out of our paycheck, take out some money and put it aside, and that money will grow in the future. And I said, yeah, I've got 2 babies. I'm not worried about putting money away when they're grown up. I'm worried about eating today. If I started saving then, instead of waiting like 10 years before starting a 403B, I would have had so much more money today. And time goes by so quickly. Before you realize it, you look in the mirror. You know, I always tell, I had an 88-year-old father-in-law who was in the bathroom, and I was in the kitchen, and he goes, "What the hell?" I was like, "Oh my God, what?" I ran in, he said, "Look, somebody put an old man in the mirror." Yeah. And I said, "I get it." And that's what happens. It happens so quickly that you just don't realize how fast life goes. And you do have to worry about today, but you have to worry about recent tomorrow and long-term tomorrow. You always have to be thinking. So one is protection. So that's what? Insurance. Make sure you have insurance in case, God forbid, something should happen. Is that?
Yeah, so the protection domain includes a lot of your insurance plans. So it could be auto insurance, could be home insurance, could be life insurance,
Protecting
disability
what you own.
insurance. Correct. Getting a will in place. A lot of people, I'm not a lawyer, but
Yeah.
I have encouraged people and gotten people to take action
God
to
forbid
put
things
that in
happen.
place.
I mean, we watch the news all the time. Entire houses disappear. uh, plane accidents, car accidents, all kinds of things.
And it happens
And
like
it
that.
oh, yeah. I mean, I know that there was a doctor who was doing like amazingly well. He had a wonderful practice, but he really did not secure his future. He never expected that he would die before most of his patients. And he died in his 50s, and he left his family in a rough situation because he didn't protect his assets. So that could happen. So one of the things you do is you recommend that people, however they do it, wherever they do it, with whomever,
Correct.
you need to protect your assets.
The philosophy that I prescribe to is called, we call it protection first.
Okay.
And there's evidence in why we choose to go in that route, because like you said, your friend who passed away relatively young
Yeah.
left the family in a very challenging situation.
Yep.
Will they make it through? Probably, but what kind of pain or challenges do they have to deal with
They have
at
to pay
that point?
that heavy mortgage.
It's
you
very
know,
tough.
the mortgage and everything was dependent on the money he was making at the time. But once he stopped making that money, once he was gone, there was nothing coming in to pay those huge bills. He could pay them easily when he was alive, but he wasn't alive anymore.
Right. And so what a lot of people do, as long as health is good and they're working and they're making some income, they're able to live life kind of the way that they want and on the comfort level that they want. But if you look at anybody's life, is life perfect every day and every year? No, right?
even close.
So we know that there's going to be challenges along the way. What are those challenges that we're probably going to have to deal with? And it really doesn't matter what profession you're in or what income you have. We all have financial threats upon us, self included. Some of those threats could include anything that takes away from the wealth that you're trying to build.
Yep.
So one thing that we're all pretty familiar with, particularly in New York, is taxes.
Yeah.
Right? You got a paycheck.
me
There's
about it.
taxes that come out of your check, right?
Yeah.
That takes away from the wealth.
Yeah.
Something called inflation, which a lot of people are aware of, at least that term,
Yeah.
relates to purchasing
And
power.
we've gone through, incredible real estate roller coasters where houses were worth around here $500,000 6 years ago, and then 3 years later it was $250,000. The market simply crashed, and people who bought high had to sell low, and some of them had to sell their houses for half of what they paid. And they got destroyed.
Right, and it's
And
very sad because
things-
they're good
it is
people.
sad.
They're good people who did what everyone said was right.
Yep.
And there's a little bit of danger, or what I call a red flag. Once everybody is saying something,
Listen.
a lot of, correct, always listen.
Yeah,
always
always
listen.
You don't always
However,
have to do, but you have to hear what's being said.
right, and if you were to think about the majority in anything, really, are the majority of people who do something normally correct. I'll give you an example. Are the majority of people who go to the casinos, do they win or do they lose? The majority.
Sometimes they win, most times they lose.
Well, look at the facility, right? It's
Yeah,
a beautiful facility.
right.
So
Somebody
the
had to pay for
majority of
that.
people, right? Exactly. The majority of people who end up in the stock market, do they win or do they lose? The majority, what do you think?
Yeah, they lose.
Right? The majority. And so what we have uncovered is if the majority are going one direction, try going the other direction, because the people who make it to the top, the elite athletes, they don't train like everybody else. They train differently. And so if you can be uncommon, have an uncommon approach, normally you will get ahead.
So your approach is naturally uncommon. How?
It's within our philosophy. So the protection element,
Okay.
a lot of the
So
insurance
that's
plans.
first in your philosophy.
Correct. And the reason it's first is because when something happens, something's going to happen along the way. We know that. And so if you don't have your protection elements set up properly, You're
So
either going to
your
be, you can be in,
philosophy, number one is cover your assets.
beautifully said. Beautifully said. Cover your assets.
Assets.
Absolutely.
Right. Number two.
Number two, so kind of coinciding with that is savings. So what a lot of people tend to do is they want to figure out, where should I put my money? What kind of account, what kind of investment should I do? And I tell people, well, how are you doing with saving? Just regular old saving.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, not too well.
And yet there's a lot of people who spend exactly what they make.
Many.
Yeah.
What we say is, so as income rises, expenses tend to rise to
With
meet
it,
that income,
right.
no matter who you are. And again, self-included, as income has gone up, my expenses have gone up.
Yeah.
But what we want to
And
do
sometimes
is,
faster.
yes, thankfully I have not done that. But what a lot of people do is, whatever's coming in is what's going out. And a lot of our conversation ends up focusing around savings, and also people chase rates of return. So if you meet with one advisor and he's getting you 4% in your account, and another advisor is getting you 5%, in the big picture you're saying, well, I'll go with the 5% advisor. Okay, your wealth, at least this is what we believe and we've seen, your wealth is more based on your savings rate than just your rate of return that you're chasing. Rate of return could be up and could be down depending on what you're investing in. But your savings rate, you have control over your savings rate. You have predictability over your savings rate. And when it comes to finances, I'm not saying money is everything. And this is coming from someone who operates in the professional field, because it's not everything, right? Relationships are. However, the lack of money could be everything.
It could put a strain on the relationship.
And normally it's a very big stress factor.
Yeah.
If you look up biggest stress that people deal with,
So
money is at
many
the top of the
people
list.
are living by paycheck. And that's tough when you know, oh no, today's only Tuesday, I don't get paid till Thursday. That's scary, and that's hard.
Right.
And, you know, we live with kids today, American kids, who I want, you know, and I've always lived, I really have, lived by the philosophy of, it's not what you want that's important. It's wanting what you have that's important.
Beautiful.
You've got to learn to enjoy and accept what you already have. So I work to improve. First of all, I worked to get what I wanted, and now I work to maintain it, just to keep it to where it is. But so many people have that four-letter word, more, you know, and they want more, bigger, better, without keeping an eye on the fact that they might lose what they already have to get what they want. And many of them struggle so hard to get what they want that by the time they get it, they're too old to enjoy it. You know, and they're not worrying about their retirement. So protection is one. Two is savings, making sure you put some aside.
Correct.
Don't spend everything you get.
Right. And if you think about that part, that's what the previous couple of generations really did. You mentioned the housing market before.
Yeah.
Oh, they bought at $500,000, but they sold at $200,000.
Yeah.
Do you know, don't you remember when people said, always buy real estate, you can't go wrong?
And I remember it.
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. I mean, there's people who bought houses for $8,000-$10,000 and sold it for $100,000.
Right.
You know, but those days are gone. Now, most of the people I know end up losing. That what happens is that they buy houses, but we seem the housing trend seems to be going into the buy fixer-uppers. Mm-hmm. You know, the theory, buy the least expensive house in the most expensive neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Because you know that as that neighborhood raises, because generally you're judged by the houses in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And if those values go up, your value goes up. So people went in and they bought the least expensive house, fixed it up, and then they were able to sell it at a much higher price. But some of those golden rules are gilded rules.
And so what we have learned is to just question. And it's not questioning from a skeptical point of view, it's just a question. So because somebody said, buy real estate, you can't go wrong, they may have bought real estate and done exceptionally well. And there's many people who have done it, and there's many people who are continuing to do so.
Yeah.
However, the average person in today's environment is dealing with a little bit of a challenge where the market didn't necessarily skyrocket, and they're in a difficulty. And I have clients in both areas where I had a client who moved and lost money on their house, and I have another client who just sold and made a good amount of money.
I have a neighbor in exactly that situation. One neighbor came in, bought low, sold high. Next person came in, bought high, and had to sell low.
Right.
Same house.
Right.
So it happens.
So we have to question what has always been said.
Yeah.
Always been said.
And you have to keep your eyes open as to what exactly the trends are.
So we can't control some factors, but some factors we can control. We can't control where the housing market's going to be.
No.
We can't.
No.
Can you control how much money you save?
And it's different for different areas.
Correct.
You know, if you had an apartment in New York City that you bought, people say, "What? You bought an apartment in New York City?" Yeah, and it just sold for $1.2 million.
Right.
Because all of a sudden, New York City is a whole different ballgame.
Correct.
You can't even afford an apartment. And I'm talking about an apartment. What used to be an apartment. Now they're condos and co-ops, and they're through the roof.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I have plenty of clients and friends who live in the city, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
You know, and
So-
expensive is a relative term.
So
but it's
having
expensive.
a financial coach is a good thing. Someone
In my
who's
opinion.
yeah, well, of course. So, you know, someone who has his or her finger on the pulse.
So I think that coaching in any aspect is very beneficial.
Yeah.
And again, I relate a lot of things to sports. So if you have an elite athlete, normally they've had a coach or a couple of coaches surrounding them. They build their team so that they can reach the top level in any area.
You may have the ability, but are you using it to its fullest potential?
Right.
And that's the key. You can be a wonderful athlete, but you could be making wrong decisions. You know,
Right.
An athlete who smokes, or an athlete who works too hard, or takes too many vitamins, or whatever. So it's good to have a coach to tell you. So number 2 was savings. Number 3.
Would be growth. And it's interesting, a lot of people address that one first.
Yeah.
Right? So we have somewhat of a reverse order, which is why it ends up being an uncommon approach. And the reason we do the growth towards the end is because we want to build a foundation. We want to build a solid financial foundation so that you have as much predictability as possible. Once you have that base built, then you can get into something with a little bit of risk. Then we say you've earned the right to do so. But if that goes wrong or the market dips for some amount of time, we always have the foundation to fall back on. Just like building a house. When someone builds a house, they don't start with the roof, right? They start with the
Good, solid
foundation, right?
You could have a beautiful house, but if it's built on a poor foundation, you're going to lose the house.
Correct. Correct. So that's
sense.
where our philosophy comes into play. And the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
You know, so we've seen evidence.
Now, this pyramid that you have here, or this...
Yes, little graphic here.
Yeah,
Almost
tell me
forgot
about
about that. So this is relates to the process that we put our clients through or when they're working with us. So at the bottom, you see knowledge.
Yep.
That's a bit of a foundation because we all have different sets of knowledge. Myself and my client are coming together, meeting at the table. We have different knowledge backgrounds. And so I've done a lot of study and continue to. I have to take tests to get different licenses. I do continuing education. I go to seminars. I continue to enhance the amount of knowledge that I have so I can serve my client as best as possible. And I'm going to bring that forth to the table. They're going to bring also some ideas to the table as well. This is where understanding comes in. What is important to you, Mr. or Mrs. Client? We all have we all come to the table differently.
Yeah.
Right? We all
Yeah.
come to the table differently. And I feel that I'm very strong in that middle area of understanding. I've studied communication. I'm involved in Toastmasters, which is a big
Right, yeah.
communication study, self-study. And understanding a client, what they're trying to accomplish, is what I want to do. That's how I serve my client. That's why they're my clients, right?
Yep.
And so at the top, you see wisdom in action. You can have as much quote unquote knowledge or information as you want. You can Google anything. However, if you Google any subject, you'll find pros and cons, or you'll find
Right.
contrasting points of view whichever Google page you land on, right? And so what we help people do is siphon through the information, figure out what is actually true, and now how do we put the action steps in place to really implement?
Makes sense. Devin, I hate to tell you this, but we are down to about like a minute and a half.
Wow, that was fast.
It goes fast when you're having fun. So, bottom line, think carefully when you're thinking finance. And there's no shame in going to a financial coach to just talk things out. Where are you? Where should you be? Where should you be going? Makes sense to me. I like the way you think. And there's a lot of people out there who are in trouble. And there's people out there who are doing extremely well. But as you say, it's a fragile market. We don't know what tomorrow is definitely going to bring. It's like the weather. So go to a coach, get the forecast on the financial situations, and I can't thank you enough for being here. Any last words, Dad?
If there's something I've learned, it's actions speak louder than words. So what are your actions? Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? That's what's going to show what you value.
Now that you understand how things can be, what are you going to do about it?
There we go.
Sounds good. Davin, thank you so much for being here. It really has been a pleasure talking with you. You sound like a man with his feet on the ground. So keep doing what you're doing. I think you made a good choice. You're in the right field. You have passion, and thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for coming here. Again, Davin,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.